All right. I said this earlier, I just want to make sure credit is given where credit is due. So in case you walked in late, this is a three-way partnership between the movie club, of which Zev is president and the faculty member. Peter Gardner is here this evening. The Disney Music Club, which I'm told the presidents are, the co-presidents, thank you, I knew they were up here somewhere, are in the room, and the Stan Getz Library. So just to pump that for a moment, the library does events almost every week in the normal semester. And mostly it's just me sitting in my office thinking, oh, that might be cool, that might be interesting to people, let's try that. But when students have ideas, I am totally open to doing that sort of thing. So if any of you have cool ideas of things that you would like to do of this nature, this is our room on Wednesday nights, and I'm happy to partner with people and make things happen. So, and make myself really annoying when I need to.
Well, I can certainly attest to that. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
So yeah, that's about the partnership. I'd wanted Don to be in the room when I introduced you, so he knew who he was talking to.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still working on it here, guys.
Okay. All right. Well, as long as you can hear us.
Yeah.
The person who will be asking you questions is Zev. Zev is a third-year film scoring major and drama minor, and he's the coordinator for the Disney Music Club as well as the president of the movie club. And this was his big idea.
Third semester.
Third semester. My apologies.
Great. Meeting you.
So he's going to be asking you a few questions, and then we're going to open it up to the rest of the room if other people have questions.
Great.
I'm doing a little tap dance here. How we doing?
Hi guys, I have a quick question. I'm helping Don do some troubleshooting up here with tech.
Yes.
If there's any way, I have a sneaky feeling that if we were to end this call and you guys called us right back, we might get some video to work. Do you think you could try that?
Totally game for that. Let's give it a shot.
Thanks so much.
Third time's the charm. Okay. We still don't see video.
Looks like it's thinking about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you guys can dive into questions and we'll just keep playing with it here. And it could be a blessing in disguise that you're not seeing me.
All right, Zev, why don't you jump in and hopefully we'll be able to see you before it ends.
All right.
Thanks.
So for those of you who do not know, Don produced the classics Beauty and the Beast, the first animated feature nominated for a Best Picture Oscar, and The Lion King, which became the top-grossing animated film of all time. It still holds the record for traditional hand-drawn animation. His other credits include Who Framed Roger Rabbit, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Atlantis: The Lost Empire, The Emperor's New Groove, and The Little Match Girl, which earned him his second Oscar nomination. He also served as executive producer on last year's Frankenwee, and is the executive producer on the Disney nature films Earth, Oceans, African Cats, and Chimpanzee, and he is currently working on the upcoming Maleficent with Angelina Jolie. Hope I didn't leave anything out.
It's true. It's all true.
Excellent. Well, first of all, Mr. Hahn, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. The first question I have is, how much footage of the time period was actually considered for the film, and what was the process of choosing the moments and tapes that ended up in the final cut?
Well, really early on, we tried a bunch of techniques. We thought, let's shoot some new interviews and kind of how would the movie look. And the most interesting thing to me was to use found footage for the film because I wanted to make the audience feel like you were in the rooms that I was in. And so that seemed like the best way to go. We had about 200 hours of footage. Very hard to find. You'd be kind of surprised probably about how difficult things were to find, even though it was maybe 10 or 15 years ago even. So we looked around a lot in a number of sources. Some of it came from, like my mom saved videotapes when I was on TV, or the publicity department might have some interviews or videotapes or something. So that was the kind of thing that we just looked everywhere we possibly could, got a gross of footage into the Avid, and then was able to go through and start sorting things out and you know, weeding out what the topics were. The other thing we wanted to do is instead of putting, we had a rule, hold on just a second.
Can you guys hear us? It looks like you're frozen.
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear you just fine.
Okay. The other rule we had, and we taped this to our Macs, was no old guys reminiscing. Because a lot of documentaries, and the temptation would be to say, God, weren't we great, and wasn't this great? But we really didn't want to have that sense of looking back. We really wanted to have a sense of voyeurism, that you were really there, and that's where all the found footage was. The quality of the clips was not as important as the content of the clips. So that 200 hours came down to our first screenings were maybe 3 or 4 hours long. I narrated it at first because we didn't know if we were going to use a celebrity narrator. And in the end, since I was an eyewitness to the, you know, what happened, I ended up just keeping myself. So, you know, I never intended to narrate, but it ended up that way.
So that was the decision why you only chose to do audio voiceovers and not having, you know, the camera sit in on.
We decided that early on. We looked at ourselves, and we do not look that good now, and as you can't see, but we don't. So we decided much better to keep an impression of everybody the way that we were in the 80s and 90s, to be able to make you feel like you were actually there. So anytime we cut modern footage in, it just felt like you were bumped out of the movie. And the audio recordings had another reason. Whenever we sat down with Jeffrey Katzenberg or Roy Disney, if there was a camera and lights, they would kind of clam up and start reading their stump speech and start editing what they were saying. But when we did audio, I could sit down in an easy chair and turn on the recorder. I had a really small recorder, and they would forget that the recorder was there after a while, so we could just have a conversation. And that gave us probably our best stuff because it was very candid and unscripted. And that was the other reason we didn't want to do on-camera interviews.
I have a question for you personally. You were a music major at Los Angeles Valley College and a fine arts minor at California State University Northridge. Is that right?
Yeah, I was a music major at Northridge also. I'm a percussionist. I played cello, and I played like symphonic percussion, timpani, and that kind of thing.
How did you make the transition over into a career in animation? And did you work in this period of time at all in the music department at Disney?
I did just a little bit. I was always interested in it. I was like a typical musician. I put myself through school giving lessons, and playing in bands and nightclubs and that kind of stuff. Really loved it. And I think had it not been for a summer job at Disney, I'd still be playing in the back of an orchestra somewhere in Albuquerque. But I loved music and still do. And it was a real central piece of my career at Disney. So even though I didn't work per se in the music department, I think I probably made more musicals than most any other producer, not because I love musicals, but I love the power of music. I think the power of music as a score element in any movie is not understood and so emotional. If you choose between words and music, I take music any day. Words are so limiting and so dumbed down, and music is not. Music's a much bigger spectrum of emotion. So I guess I just love its ability to transform you and transport you, and that's why I've always been attracted to it. And I'm so thankful I have a vocabulary to talk to people. So when I can work with a Danny Elfman or somebody, I can actually understand what they're saying and talk back with some sort of normalcy about giving notes and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. What has personally been the hardest aspect for you about working at Disney, and what has been the most enjoyable aspect? Is that a fair question, or?
Yeah, hardest is always money and financial constraints. Mm-hmm. I think it's probably the same at any company, because there's never enough money and there's never enough time. And man, as much as you try, that's always the case. I'm starting on a movie right now, and we haven't even started. We're just storyboarding it, and already we're seeing, God, we're behind, and so it's that feeling. I think that's just normal. It's normal in the arts. It's normal in construction, and that's the biggest problem. The biggest upside is always the people and always the experience of discovery. People think, oh, it might be meeting somebody famous or showing up on the red carpet to a premiere. It's not that at all. You can go to any premiere you'd like and please do. But when you're sitting in a room or a screening room or a story room or composing or something, and you come across a great melody or you come across a great solution to a story problem, those are the times that I love, and those are the times I live for. And that's why I stay in the movie business. I don't stay in because I like doing budgets or answering the phone.
How did you decide what to put in the final cut and what to leave out? And was a similar process used when deciding what of the interview footage to use?
Yeah, to get the original narrative down, I actually sat down and told the story just myself, without a script. I just turned on an audio recorder and told it. And that gave me the spine of an audio track to be able to put visuals to. Mm-hmm. And that became a 3 or 4 hour version of the story. And I put a box around the story saying, let's start in 1984 when Katzenberg and Eisner started the company. We'll end around Lion King. Because after Lion King, it was a financial high for the company. And after that, it starts to turn into the Pixar era. So those brackets gave me some limits. And having an audio track gave me some sense of a clothesline to hang all the story on. And then from there, it became a matter of plussing, which is an old Disney term of putting in the clip we had and then trying to get a better clip. So if we had a clip of, Katzenberg sitting next to Roy Disney talking, and the quality was awful, but what they were doing was great, we left it in, and we didn't worry about it. We didn't worry about cleaning it up, and we would constantly, up till the very end of our deadlines, find these little things. Somebody would call up and one of them was somebody called up and said, I have this footage from Frank Wells' funeral where Roy Disney doesn't like the introduction he's getting. And I said, no, really? That doesn't sound like Roy. And I looked at it and I thought, oh my God, Roy's really an ass here. So then you have to put that in. And I think aesthetically, as a director, I was trying to be journalistic. I was just trying to lay the facts out and let you as an audience decide if there's any heroes or villains. So I didn't consciously try to aggrandize or villainize any of the characters. I really just wanted to present the facts and let you decide.
Mm-hmm. How much creative input did you have on your films, namely Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King, and how much creative input does a producer usually have?
It depends on the producer. I think there's that title is given to a lot of different people, some of which are financial, some of which are marketeers. Since my background is more artsy, I love the story and art part of it all. And so my job is to help the directors tell their story. So I work with great directors, and I think my skill and my gift, if I have one, is that I can recognize really good people, and I can build really good teams of people, and then I can stay out of their way. So I'm in all the rooms. I contribute. I have lines and jokes and things like that in all the movies, but it's not a scorecard. The best idea wins. So whoever has the best idea, even if it's the custodian or me or whoever, that's what gets in the movie, and I like that.
At some point, I know it wasn't mentioned in the documentary, but I think at some point in this period of time, I think it was somebody made the decision to split the crew up. Not everybody had to go work on the next film. Do you feel that that decision was a factor in how the films from, say, Beauty and the Beast onward turned out?
Yeah, it's a lot like baseball. You can have a winning season. You can have a team that's winning and has great chemistry, and then people want opportunities. If you're the second string first baseman, you want to go be first string first baseman. So you want to direct or you want to animate someplace else, and you'll go do that. So what started to happen was just the natural growth of people, and you can't capture lightning in a bottle every time. In fact, I would hire the crew that did Beauty and the Beast was almost identical to the crew that did Atlantis about 10 years later, and Beauty and the Beast was a enormous critical and financial success. Atlantis was good. It's become kind of a cult movie, but and we were trying to do something different, more based on graphic novels. But it wasn't the same energy because we were all 10 years older. We were at a different place in our lives, and people change. And you'll find the same thing. You know, you're in your situation now, you're studying, you're in school. You'll be an incredibly different person 5 years from now. And that's a good thing. You know, I don't know if we're prepared for that amount of change, but that's what we found anyway, artistically, as you look back and go, man, have I changed?
I have just one more question before we open up to the audience.
Sure.
There are quite a good number of us who are planning on majoring in film scoring or songwriting, maybe some of us specifically for musical theater. Do you have any words of advice for us, for those of us who hope to work in the film industry someday, namely at Disney?
Wow. Yes, I'll be very candid. It's a time of great opportunity. Producers and filmmakers like myself tend to go with people that they know. So if I have a choice between a new composer maybe that I haven't worked with before or Hans Zimmer, I'm probably going to use Hans, even though he's a little more expensive because I know I have a known quantity there. Having said that, I've also worked with some really brilliant people coming up. Studios are suffering financially a little bit, so they're looking for creative choices. And I'll take Paramount, for example. Paramount does the paranormal activity movies, and they make them for $100,000, and they make a lot of money. Those are done on a shoestring, and it's a chance for actors and camera people and musicians to work on a really big movie for low budget price and get your foot in the door. So my biggest advice, I suppose, would be to know that things aren't going to take overnight, to not give up, and to just get into the culture. There's some, by that I mean, like I'll use Hans Zimmer just as an example. Hans has a big studio. He has a number of people running around getting coffee and meals and Chinese food and stuff. Half of his composers came from that. They were composers that came out of school and went over there and just said, listen, I'll work for free for a year and deliver coffee. And Hans will give him a cue to write once in a while. Then he'll give him 2 cues to write, and then he'll give him a movie to write. And just by being in the culture, but just by knowing that person, it builds a trust and awareness of what that person's talents are. So get in the culture, find where you want to be, and just get there. Intern, experience, find mentors, living or dead, that you like, and learn from them. And just do as much as you can to absorb that culture. Musical theater is a little bit different. There's fewer shows. There's very few break into song, musicals happening in film, although they do happen. Disney's making Into the Woods right now. Right. So again, if you have a choice of spending money on a film, Disney's going to probably spend it on Stephen Sondheim and not on you or I. So, but I have some really good friends that are, in the business of writing for Broadway, and they do great work. And they take their stuff and workshop it at community theaters. I have some friends that just opened a show on Broadway, and they took it from Los Angeles to Seattle to Atlanta, and finally they were on Broadway. And the show's gone already, but that experience was great. So, don't be too goal-oriented. Just enjoy the journey while you have it. The tools that you have now for writing and composing are spectacular. I wish I had more hours in the day, because I would totally set up a keyboard and compose stuff myself, but I don't. So the opportunity to express yourself and compose stuff is great. And also, don't be too focused on one product. Films are a small part of what needs to get written. And like Michael Giacchino, who does Star Trek movies with J.J. Abrams and a lot of Pixar movies, started out scoring games. And before that, he was a secretary on the Disney lot for a publicist. And so I knew him as a guy who got coffee, and I go, "Hi, Michael, how you doing?" "Oh, good. What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm fooling around with music." "Oh, really?" 10 years later, he's writing the score for Ratatouille and Incredibles. So, and it's an achievable thing. It's not just winning the lottery. I think that's something you guys could absolutely achieve. He works hard. He's smart, and he studies. But Hans studies. Hans starts out, before he writes anything, and he'll listen to Brahms, and he'll study scores, and he'll bring in an interesting collaborator. He'll find an interesting classical guitarist for Pirates of the Caribbean, or whatever, and really try to learn before he jumps into writing something. So learning is another component, and that's a lifelong thing. You're not going to learn as much as you need to learn just in the few years that you're in school. You'll get a great foundation, and it's totally valuable. But that amount of learning will have to continue through your entire career.
I think we're going to open up to the floor for audience questions.
If you have a question, just put your hand up, and I'll hand you the mic here so you can be heard.
Hello, thank you again for being here. This is a question we seem to ask everybody that we talk to, and I find it personally as one of the most helpful things to know about a person. And so what would you consider your biggest personal or business-related failure, and how did that affect your successes afterwards?
It's a good question. There's probably a million answers. I certainly fail more than I succeed, and I don't see that as a negative. I think you really want to fail, but fail quickly and fail often. So by that I mean I'm up at ILM today, up in Northern California, working on a project, and we've been in a story meeting all day long, and we've had 150 terrible ideas and about 3 good ideas. It's been great. It's been a great day. So you have to just weed through that material, I think, so that the failures are plentiful in my life, and they are where the good stuff comes from. When it comes to the arts, there's this sense that that you have talent or you don't, and I don't believe in that. You certainly have a gift towards something, and you're all doing what you're doing because you have a gift towards something. But the really good people that I know that are really successful have failed a lot, and they work a lot harder than you know, a lot harder. They stay up later, they work longer, they read scores more, they listen to more music, they play in more bands, and they just work hard. And that's the secret nobody really wants to hear a lot of times. But I work hard, and I stay up till probably 2 every morning reading scripts and working on stuff. And I do it because I love it, but I also realize that failure, like in sports, like in anything, is part of the business. You're going to hit more clams than you are good notes, and that's okay. You got to learn.
Someone else?
I'm not a composer. I'm actually terrible at it. I'm very not good at it at all. But I am studying to be an educator. And you went to school for music, and I'm assuming that you had music in elementary school and in high school. So what I want to know from you is, what do I need to bring to children? What affected you positively? What made you want to go to school for music? Who do you remember for the good? Who do you remember for the bad? And how do I encourage more Don Hahns?
Well, thank you. I think that the real answer was access for me. I grew up in Southern California in Orange County, and it was all about access. I went to a school district where you got handed a musical instrument in the 4th grade. I mean, you just got handed an instrument. So I was a tall guy, and they gave me a cello. And I didn't, I wanted to play something, so I learned how to play cello, but the access to that, and then having to show up and play or sing or be in the marching band or whatever, was all good. And I think so many schools just are not able or fail on the fundamentals of just offering access to instruments and facilities. Then yes, you need good faculty and good curriculum. But that basis of just saying, hey, here's a room full of instruments, go pick out a trombone and just see what it feels like to blow on that stupid thing, and just try that out. And it was so liberating for me, because I was really introverted when I was younger and really quiet. And so to play drums, especially in percussion, which is where I ended up, was fantastic, because I could be really noisy and very expressive with that, where I wasn't with my words. But that access, and then I had some teachers that were really inspiring. They made it fun, and it never seemed like work. And I think that was the other part of it. It never seemed like extracurricular. It never seemed like unimportant. It wasn't like, well, math and reading and writing is important, but music, that's kind of like an after-school thing. It wasn't that at all. my school system luckily was, this is as important. And there's certainly plenty of information now that lines up the arts and music with, with having a fantastic effect on math and other parts, and that brain balance that music gives you is really important. So that access to inspiring teachers, just basic equipment and having it available, and then having a school system that put music in the same sentence as English, history, and math was really important. And because I could gravitate, I loved the other subjects, but I really loved music. And I found everything there. It had narrative, it had texture, it had everything I needed.
Thank you. Great question. We probably have time for one or two more if people have other stuff they want to ask. Yeah.
Hello. Thanks for joining us again. I was just wondering, what are your thoughts on the new Disney animated feature that just came out, Frozen? What do you think it signifies to the Disney animation studios? Because you mentioned the Pixar era after Lion King. Do you think, and like the numbers for Frozen are quite impressive, and the critics are also saying a lot of positive things?
Yeah.
I was just wondering about your thoughts and what it might mean for the studios.
Well, it's a good question. The movie itself is a really good movie. It wasn't up until 6 months ago. They really had troubles telling the story. And then the good thing about Disney Pixar is they don't give up. They don't settle, and they work on the story tirelessly until it's right. It's also a musical. It's a break into song musical, and it's not marketed that way. The studio chose to market it. If you look at the poster, it looks like a bunch of people buried in quicksand. You don't even know it's a period film, and you have no idea it's a musical. And that's, I think, their rationale, whether you agree with it or not, is to try to get the audience in who may not want to see a musical. And once they're in the seats, they're going to love it. And that's exactly what happened. I think it's good. It's great for Disney animation. It's great for musicals and people who love to write and create music. And change is the constant in Hollywood and in entertainment as a whole. Pixar has had a great run, and they will continue to for a while, hopefully forever. Disney Animation has been in a slump for a while, and I think the last 2 or 3 movies, if you put Tangled and Wreck-It Ralph and this movie together, they're having a big comeback right now, just like we did back in the 90s with Lion King and Beauty. So it's exciting there. So that's, when you think about getting into those places for your career and expressing yourself, the other thing I would say too, just to go back a little bit on an earlier question, is to try to not focus too much on getting a job at Disney. I've talked to artists who say, all I want to do is be I want to work at Pixar as a lighter. And they have such a specific goal that it's denying them a bigger life experience. And so I take the Michael Giacchino thing, which is, I want a job at Disney, so I'm going to load people onto the Matterhorn bobsleds as a ride operator, and then compose movies in the evening and write for commercials and write a bunch of video games and write a couple of cues in a movie and then write a whole movie, and allow yourself that process. It's okay to take 5 or 10 years to develop your career. In fact, the real truth is it's going to take 50 years to develop your real career, and even then you won't have developed it fully. So allow yourself that space to grow and have that time to grow. And that means Disney hires one composer a year to write a musical for their movies. So maybe that's you. That's great. But there's so many other great things out there, and so many other things to write for the stage, for games, for opera, for so many things that you want to just cast a broad net and say, I'm a musician, and just say I would choose that as my goal. Declare that, and then where you work becomes just an outgrowth of that. I think if you get too focused sometimes, you may have a misconception of what Disney is. And one of the reasons I wanted to make Waking Sleeping Beauty is to say there is no Disney. Disney is, in the case of that movie, 4 or 5 or 6 people making the decisions and trying to figure it out as we went. And we were stumbling through the dark most of the time. That's Disney. There's nobody in the back room like Wizard of Oz that's pulling levers or anything else. So when you say I want to work for Disney, what I hear is I want to work for something that's highly visible, at the top of quality, at the height of narrative storytelling, and using music to its full narrative effect. That's brilliant. All of those things are fantastic. So if that's the Disney you're talking about, great, the Disney aesthetic. Don't get too focused on whose name is on your paycheck.
Hi, Don. I just curious what Disney's reception, or is it Bob Iger is now Disney? I think what their reception is of Waking Sleeping Beauty, if anything, if there's any been conversations with that.
Well, it was okay. I'm just speaking candidly because I know none of you will be on Facebook later. It was okay. I have to honestly say the studio paid for this movie. They didn't have to do it. I think what Iger liked about it is it preserved some corporate history, and the movie has been used as much as a business learning tool at business colleges as it has in art and music, because of its business lessons. So I would say very supportive. They gave us a good release, they gave us a marketing budget, and they gave us the money to make it. And that's a pretty generous thing to do, because it's not always a flattering look at people. But again, it was a movie about people. It wasn't a movie about a brand name or Disney. It's a movie about Michael and Jeffrey and Roy and Peter and Don and Howard. And in that light, what it shows, I think, and why people like Bob Iger were fine with it, is it shows that we're human. And it shows that we have egos, and that we fail, and that we're, wonderful and terrible in the same sentence. And I think the way it humanized the process in the end was, I hope, encouraging and inspirational. Just to say, when you choose a life in the arts, like music, it's hard. It's really hard. And that's okay, because it's hard for everybody. We were the guys that made Lion King. It was really hard, so is everything. So is digging a ditch. So the arts are hard. It's not about talent. It's about work and being smart. And I think that's why Iger and a lot of the industry were fine with it. And I went over to DreamWorks and sat down with Jeffrey Katzenberg and showed him this movie. And I was really nervous, because I thought he would hate it. But in a funny way, he comes off as a hero in this movie, and because he makes the biggest change. And even he was fine with it. So it was a great experience.
Hey, Don. Thank you for coming out and listening to us. I am first semester coming in. I am a composer and a listener. My question was, what's on your mind right now?
Right now, I have to go to the bathroom. No, I'm just kidding. I don't. If you want to know what's literally on my mind, I'm finishing a movie and starting a movie. As a producer, you're trying to, pull things together. We're finishing Maleficent, which I've worked on for about 7 years. It's a retelling of the Sleeping Beauty story, and it stars Elle Fanning as Aurora and Angelina as Maleficent. It's a big stinking movie. We shot it in London last year, and I think it's turning out really well. So I worry about that, and we're working hard to finish it great. And at the same time, I'm starting another movie just in the early storyboard phases. So that's what's on my mind. I'm a little overweight. That's on my mind. But I do it because I love it. It's why you guys do what you do, and that's what I think about all day long.
I think that's about all the time we have right now. We don't want to keep you too long, but I just say thank you again so much for speaking to us. I'm sure we all love this movie, and we really got a lot out of it. I know, even out of the 7th time seeing it, I still find something new to admire. So thank you so much.
Thanks. You guys have a good night. It's a pleasure. Really flattering you would choose to see it, and I wish you all great luck. Just hang in there, work hard, and look forward to seeing you again sometime.
Thank you, Don.
Thanks, Don.
It's true. It's all true.
Excellent. Well, first of all, Mr. Hahn, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. The first question I have is, how much footage of the time period was actually considered for the film, and what was the process of choosing the moments and tapes that ended up in the final cut?
Well, really early on, we tried a bunch of techniques. We thought, let's shoot some new interviews and kind of how would the movie look. And the most interesting thing to me was to use found footage for the film, because I wanted to make the audience feel like you were in the rooms that I was in. And so that seemed like the best way to go. We had about 200 hours of footage. Very hard to find. You'd be kind of surprised probably about how difficult things were to find, even though it was maybe 10 or 15 years ago even. So we looked around a lot in a number of sources. Some of it came from, like my mom saved videotapes when I was on TV, or the publicity department might have some interviews or videotapes or something. So that was the kind of thing that we just looked everywhere we possibly could, got a gross of footage into the Avid, and then was able to go through and start sorting things out and weeding out what the topics were. The other thing we wanted to do is, instead of we had a rule. Hold on just a second.
Can you guys hear us? It looks like you're frozen.
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear you just fine.
Okay. The other rule we had, and we taped this to our Macs, was no old guys reminiscing. Because a lot of documentaries, and the temptation would be to say, God, weren't we great, and wasn't this great? But we really didn't want to have that sense of looking back. We really wanted to have a sense of voyeurism, that you were really there, and that's where all the found footage was. The quality of the clips was not as important as the content of the clips. So that 200 hours came down to, our first screenings were maybe 3 or 4 hours long. I narrated it at first because we didn't know if we were going to use a celebrity narrator. And in the end, since I was an eyewitness to the what happened, I ended up just keeping myself. So, I never intended to narrate, but it ended up that way.
So that was the decision why you only chose to do audio voiceovers and not having the camera sit in on.
We decided that early on. We looked at ourselves.
All right. I said this earlier, I just want to make sure credit is given where credit is due. So in case you walked in late, this is a three-way partnership between the movie club, of which Zev is president, and the faculty member, Peter Gardner, is here this evening. The Disney Music Club, which I'm told the presidents are, the co-presidents, thank you, I knew they were up here somewhere, are in the room, and the Stan Getz Library. So just to pump that for a moment, the library does events almost every week in the normal semester. And mostly it's just me sitting in my office thinking, oh, that might be cool, that might be interesting to people, let's try that. But when students have ideas, I am totally open to doing that sort of thing. So if any of you have cool ideas of things that you would like to do of this nature, this is our room on Wednesday nights, and I'm happy to partner with people and make things happen. So, and make myself really annoying when I need to.
I can certainly attest to that. I'm just kidding.
Okay. We still don't see video.
Looks like it's thinking about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you guys can dive into questions, and we'll just keep playing with it here. And it could be a blessing in disguise that you're not seeing me.
All right, Zev, why don't you jump in, and hopefully we'll be able to see you before it ends.
All right.
Thanks.
So for those of you who do not know, Don produced the classics Beauty and the Beast, the first animated feature nominated for Best Picture Oscar, and The Lion King, which became the top-grossing animated film of all time. It still holds the record for traditional hand-drawn animation. His other credits include Who Framed Roger Rabbit, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Atlantis: The Lost Empire, The Emperor's New Groove, and The Little Match Girl, which earned him his second Oscar nomination. He also served as executive producer on last year's Frankenwee, and is the executive producer on the Disney nature films Earth, Oceans, African Cats, and Chimpanzee, and he is currently working on the upcoming Maleficent with Angelina Jolie. Hope I didn't leave anything out. Just kidding.
So yeah, that's about the partnership. I'd wanted Don to be in the room when I introduced you, so he knew who he was talking to.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still working on it here, guys.
Okay. All right. Well, as long as you can hear us.
Yeah,
The
you're
person
fine.
who will be asking you questions is Zev. Zev is a third-year film scoring major and drama minor. And he's the coordinator for the Disney Music Club as well as the president of the movie club. And this was his big idea.
Third semester.
Third semester. My apologies.
Great. Meeting you.
So he's going to be asking you a few questions, and then we're going to open it up to the rest of the room if other people have questions.
Great.
I'm doing a little tap dance here. How we doing?
Hi, guys. I have a quick question. I'm helping Don do some troubleshooting up here with tech.
Yes.
If there's any way, I have a sneaky feeling that if we were to end this call and you guys called us right back, we might get some video to work. Do you think you could try that?
Totally game for that. Let's give it a
Okay,
shot.
thanks so much.
Third time's a charm.